By the same token, one thing that has always, sometimes journalists can be Puritans in their own way. They like the rules to be enforced without exception. It is not unheard of in this community for private groups to meet in private rooms and restaurants and drink. It certainly is not unheard of for alcohol to flow rather freely at the Glasgow Highland Games. But those activities are illegal. If our leaders are willing to blink and wink at those, what does that say about our community, and what does that say about the argument from the law enforcement people I've talked to that it can be better enforced and regulated?
Well, I'm not going to comment on our city police or our sheriff. My hope is that, or our state police, that all of those organizations enforce the law. And if there is drinking and driving, and common sense tells you, Ronnie, that if you make alcohol more available in more places that you have to drive to partake, and then you leave, that you're going to have more people drinking and driving. Now, I understand the concept of designated driver, and I hope any group that goes out has such a person. But just like the view that this is only for those that want a glass of wine, the view that there will always be a designated driver is a rather idealistic view. I thought it was right interesting. In the newspaper, the day the petition was announced, there was an ad, and I don't know whether you can see it on camera, but it says at the top, "Don't drink and drive," and it has a little fella sitting there with his bottle. But one of the comments I thought was particularly interesting said, if you are driving and stopped by a law enforcement officer and ask, "Have you been drinking?" always be in a position to answer no.
I agree.
And I thought that was a wonderful article. And to me, that's just another reason not to make more opportunities available.
Well, when an earlier point that Steve made, however, is anybody we're trying to induce to come into our community, if it's an industrial client, they may not necessarily come from above the Ohio River or up east, but if they're coming from the south, they're 99.9% of the time coming from metropolitan areas. This is a legal product, and it is something, local option didn't exist before, the 30s. There were some rather colorful stories about taverns in Barron County and nearby counties. Why should one segment of society be able to deny a social amenity that nearly all of the country takes for granted? And apparently most of the country is managing in some form or another, while probably through the efforts of designated drivers, maybe more so through the efforts of groups like Mothers Against Drunk Driving, those statistics have declined.
Well, Ronnie, I think when you look at use and abuse, we have historically entertained the people that Steve has talked about. Companies have done that privately, and we have always managed, I hope, to comply with the law in most of those cases. The thing that I think in this particular situation is that the law in Kentucky since the 30s has given communities the opportunity to make that decision. our community made the decision back in the 30s to be dry. In all of the elections that have taken place to try to change that since the 30s, and I don't know before the 80s because I wasn't actively involved until I came back here in '68, but the majority of the people have said we don't want that in the community. This is a, republic,
right.
The majority controlled. And I've seen the argument about, well, we ought to have the choice. As a matter of fact, I talked to a man I've got a right. No, we don't have a right. We have what the law grants. You could make the same argument for marijuana. Why shouldn't,
Well, because marijuana is an illegal drug all across the country.
Alcohol is in Barron County.
But marijuana is an illegal.
It is only illegal to serve others alcohol.
And to sell it.
Well, possession of marijuana or use of marijuana anywhere in the country is illegal. Unless it's for medicinal purposes.
But I'm saying that's anytime you start talking about, well, we just want a choice, that could apply to anybody on any issue. And that's why you have laws. We have laws in this country that prohibit marijuana. We have laws in this country that prohibit other drugs. We have statutes in Kentucky that allow community to prohibit alcohol, which is a drug, an intoxicant.
The point, and the reason I don't want to get into the marijuana debate is because we consider this a controversial enough issue. We don't need to complicate it. And I certainly want to try my best to walk down the middle of the line. But we also started out by saying we wanted to make sure we got some factual information. It's not illegal to possess alcohol in this county. It is illegal for me to serve it to you, whether for money or otherwise.
And to sell it.
And yes, for money or for otherwise. But what about Walter's point that we have repeatedly voted this way and the majority have repeatedly made their choice? It must be frustrating if you feel otherwise, but isn't that under Kentucky's local option laws? Isn't that their right to try to do that and
Absolutely.
to try to win this debate?
Absolutely. I don't, I meant to say this at the beginning. I have known Walter Davis since I came back to this community, and there's nobody in Glasgow that I have any more respect for. Some of my closest friends are going to vote no on this issue. I respect that, and we need to have the dialogue that we're having here. I will say two things again. We have only voted on this issue once in our community's history. That was in 2000. This is not wet community. This is limited sales only in restaurants. And the only time we've ever voted on that was in 2000. And why vote again? Because all of these communities, and Walter's point is right, each community is unique and each community has its own standards. But the reality is that if we're looking for 20 years down the road and 30 years down the road, we're at a crossroads. Glasgow has always enjoyed a senior position in terms of its relationship to Bowling Green versus the other surrounding communities. If you look at WBKL, they identify Bowling Green, Glasgow. They give the Glasgow temperature in other communities. We have to determine if we want to protect our position as a regional hub, economic hub, or if we want to cede that position. And I'm not talking about 2 years from now or 5 years from now. I'm talking about 30 years down the road. Do we want to become a bedroom community? Do we want to move to the same relationship with Bowling Green that Scottsville and Brownsville and Morgantown and Russellville and all those other communities have? I don't think so. I think we're much better off when we control our own economic destiny. And we have to have the things in this community that keep people from driving past Glasgow and Barron County to go to Bowling Green. It is a very mobile community, very mobile society, and they will drive to Bowling Green for dinner, spend money at the mall, turn around and come back, and never have a drop of alcohol. But if we don't take the first steps of trying to have a community here that attracts people from the region for the long term, we are ceding our position and we're going to become a bedroom community. And I don't think that's healthy for us.
Walter, I'll give you a chance when we come back, when we need to take a break. I did want to say something just real briefly. Steve's right, the rules have changed through the legislature. Some wag in Frankfurt said Kentucky is going wet, drip by drip by drip, because the legislature clearly is trying to make it easier. Whether that's good or bad is somebody else's decision. We'll take a short break, and we'll be right back to talk more about this question facing our community.